Hi, folks. Nice to meet everybody. My name is Dania Din. You gave me a very good intro. Thank you very much. But I formerly led talent strategy and operations for Amazon, specifically in the US, Canada, Mexico, Japan, and Brazil. Amazon, I'm not sure. Has anybody heard of Amazon? Yeah? small little organization. When I tell people some of the stuff that we did at Amazon, it almost sounds fake, right? When we say, like, I hired millions of people. I really meant it, or I really mean it. Last year, we hired 1.5 million people. And so I just want to sit with that number for a second. 1.5 million people. During this presentation, we'll talk about what that actually meant in context and how we actually did that, some of our hurdles. But in the back half of the presentation, I actually want to share some of my biggest learning lessons as a part of going through this process. There's one in particular that really stood out to me, and I think it's super relevant for all of us in this room, especially given the environment of the world right now. So with that, we'll dive into a few different areas of large-scale hiring and how we can utilize HR tech to our advantage. So, and I'll go back for a second. I like the image on the left. It was the most updated image I found, but it's actually from I believe 2021 or 2022, and it compares Amazon's revenue against other countries' GDP. So I think the number there is like maybe 1.7 trillion. Today, Amazon's market cap is about double that. So again, I just want to give you the size of Amazon in terms of scale. I know everybody is familiar with the actual products that Amazon offers, everything from what you know today with Amazon Prime to grocery, right? Amazon owns Whole Foods through video and IMBD. These are all Amazon business lines, and so a very globalized environment that we were hiring for, and we were hiring a lot of different roles. Amazon is also the largest employer globally, and so that, again, made for various different challenges when we were going into different hiring markets. The way that we do things in the US is very, very different than the way we do things in Japan, where in Japan, you are a lifelong employee. Amazon can never, quote unquote, fire you because of Japanese regulations. And so the way in which we had to hire and operate was also super different. So I kind of broke it up into a few different problems that I'm going to walk you through. Problem number one was that we had an outdated and inflexible process. Each individual that we needed to hire at Amazon needed to come in for what we called a new hire orientation or a new hire event. And it's essentially where they'd come in and they'd get a little bit of an orientation, they'd set up their tech, they'd do their I-9 paperwork, and it didn't matter if you were an hourly employee or a corporate employee, everybody had to come in for what we called, again, a new hire event. And so as you can imagine, Amazon hires different types of roles, but the largest role that Amazon hires for are actually hourly roles. And so getting somebody in an hourly capacity to come in before they even start getting paid, it served to be a challenge. And I think everybody is familiar with the image on the left in terms of what a recruitment funnel looks like. But in that little green box, if we need to get to 1.5 million people in the door, you can imagine how many people we're working with in the awareness section, right? So at one point when I joined Amazon, or around COVID time, our hiring ratio, our application to hiring ratio was somewhere in the realm of about 12 to 1, meaning we needed 12 people to apply to get one person successfully in the door. And so we're talking now, again, millions and millions of folks. And so going back to our orientation that we did, it wasn't scalable. We were running into several issues. One was we had high offer fallout rates. So about somewhere in the realm of 40% never actually even made it to the orientation. And so again, time is money. And if we were, our cost per hire at what could have been somewhere in the realm of $150 per person. And so you can see what the immediate issue was. Beyond that, we also ran into a lot of logistical hurdles. This had to be done in person. And so during Prime Day or around the holiday season when Amazon did a lot of hiring, you can imagine that lines were actually like out the door of some of our facilities. So that wasn't fun either, especially when you look at a market like Fargo, North Dakota, where Amazon was rapidly expanding into, and it was November, and it was snowing, and the line was out the door to have your new hire orientation. And then finally, Amazon is an American organization, and so when we built initially, we built things with this perspective of the US in mind. But as Amazon rapidly scaled and we were launching in new countries, we were launching in multiple countries year after year, what we were doing in the US wasn't necessarily working in other parts of the world either. And so again, we were just running into issues, and slowly, piece by piece, we started to watch all of it. Crumble is probably a very strong word, but like things were breaking apart a little bit. It was costing a lot of money, and Amazon has their leadership principles. The number one leadership principle is frugality. And so it was causing quite a few issues on that front. So moving into the solution, Amazon, very, very kind of solution-oriented organization. There's no roadmap that they give you. It's a problem-solving culture. And so in this scenario, they told me, Dania, figure out how to fix new hire events and figure out what we're going to do. So I was like, okay, great. I will do that. And eventually what I came up with was something that we ended up referring to as virtual new hire orientation, or VNHE. And we did that kind of via three different methodologies. The first is tech enablement, right, or HR technology. Amazon builds its own technology. That's another kind of tenant that we have. I think some of the only outside technology that Amazon uses is Slack. We have our own version of Zoom. Everything was built in-house. And so what we did was, number one, and this took us months, but we created an AI-driven scheduling platform. It predicted hiring surges for us. So we knew that probably around early December timeframe, that Amazon was going to get orders out the door, right? Like it's the holiday season, you're starting to get those orders in. So we knew that we needed to have our highest team in place during that time, which means, if you're working backwards from that, maybe we need to get started hiring in like August, September to make sure that those people were settled and ready to go come the first 2 weeks of December. And so we created an AI-driven platform that allowed us to predict when hiring surges were going to happen based off of package volume specifically. And then it would open and close our appointments, our kind of in-person or virtual appointments that we were hosting for orientation. And so that allowed us to make sure we were getting people in the door at the right time, and we were avoiding some of those issues like having lines outside the door in Fargo, North Dakota. It also gave us flexibility for new hires. So we had this rigid system where you had to come in person to do your orientation. And as a part of this process, and I guess evident in the name virtual new hire process, we gave candidates 3 options to improve their experience and Amazon's ability to kind of move fast. The first was you could stick with the traditional in-person experience. Some people want to come in person. Some people want to set up their technology in person. That's totally fine and absolutely fair. So we continued keeping that as an option, and Amazon was already set up to support doing so. Number 2 was that we introduced virtual one-on-one appointments. And so you would, instead of like selecting a date and time that you were gonna come in person, you would select a date and time that you were gonna have your virtual appointment. Think like when you're scheduling a doctor's appointment virtually, that was the model that we kind of set up, but to do your I-9 paperwork and tech setup. And then finally, we introduced a kind of newer option. It was a little bit more of a novel idea, but it was completely virtual and self-guided. Didn't need a person at the other end. You could do it whenever you wanted to. And so if you preferred to do your paperwork and set up your tech at 10 p.m. on a Saturday, go for it. And that gave us the flexibility to work with employees across the board, whether, again, they were corporate employees or hourly employees who, maybe were working a night shift and couldn't come in during our opening hours. It also allowed us to kind of scale and localize. So, again, cultural norms are different no matter where you go. In Japan, they really enjoyed the face-to-face, and so we didn't see as much adoption there. But in Mexico, we saw really high levels of adoption with some of the virtual experiences that we roll out. Younger workforce, really adept with technology. And so, again, we were able to cater to all of our audiences and create a better experience. Who's familiar with the term Kaizen? Yes, okay, everybody. For those who are not, Kaizen is a Japanese term, and it means continuous improvement. When you think about like a staircase, it's like step by step by step. So this didn't happen overnight. It was very much a process of Kaizen. But ultimately, again, we saw an increase in show-up rates in the double digits, which, again, when you're timesing it by several million, those dollars were super impactful. And then, again, it was scalable, it was cost-effective, and candidate-friendly. So all of that said, it probably took years off of my life to go through this process. But there's one learning lesson that I want to come back to and chat through, and that's specifically change management and trust. And I think that's relevant to everybody in this room. I recently joined Russell Reynolds. It's the largest executive search firm in the world. I'm not sure if folks are familiar, but we recently had our all consultants kickoff meeting a few weeks after I joined, and Nancy Gibbs, who was the former editor of Time magazine, joined us. And she gave us a really interesting kind of keynote speech, but she used this quote, and immediately like alarm bells started ringing in my head, and I was so moved by it. Public sentiment is everything. With public sentiment, nothing can fail, but without it, nothing can succeed. And so going back to Amazon, that was probably the thing that was, as we were working on this process, I thought about it, right? I think we've all been a part of large-scale changes at organizations that are hard, and so I thought about it. And we had a change management plan in place. But if I had to go back and do it all again, it would actually probably all center on the change management and building trust in the organization first. And to put it into context, I guess, Amazon, we have, at least in the US, we had about 300 folks who sat on the ground to run these new hire orientations across the country for folks. We had reductions in forces, some of which that had hit this group. And so there was this distrust in words like efficiency, or we're rolling out new technology that's gonna make your job easier, right? Like that maybe would have resonated several years ago, but it did not resonate in the environment that really we are, I think, all probably living in today. I'm not sure if anybody follows the Edelman Trust Barometer, or if you have read it yet. And if you haven't, you can find it for free online. I think there's super powerful information in there. But one of the things that came out in this year's edition of the Edelman Trust Barometer was that, and they do kind of a lot of heavy data-driven research, is that job security is top of mind for everybody. And the words of globalization and efficiency and technology, naturally they're scaring folks a little bit, right? Especially last year when all this stuff with AI was happening, right? Like it was probably a scary moment for many folks within organizations who either were impacted or felt that maybe suddenly they could be impacted. And so you have to understand, right? And I don't think, again, it was top of mind for me and my team, but I don't think I understood to this extent how strong of a sentiment that existed within Amazon and the organization. One of the other things that the Edelman Trust Barometer reported on this year, which I think, again, super interesting, companies and corporations are now the #1 most trusted institutions in the world. Not governments, not any other sort of organization. Corporations are the most trusted environments. And so if you aren't taking that into consideration, right? Trust is already going down, but if you aren't taking the trust factor into consideration when you're thinking through change management, you have an even larger issue at your hands. And so I think that was probably my largest lesson in rolling out VNHE. It was a massive initiative. It took probably a year when it was all said and done to actually roll it out and get it working and deployed. But when we did, folks actually, our own Amazon employees on the ground didn't adopt the processes. There was a lot of resistance. And so all in all, again, if I could do it all over again, I would have built the whole strategy on how do you build trust and how do you kind of run effective change management processes when you're changing people's roles and responsibilities, right? Everybody's roles and responsibilities will evolve. The job description is always evolving, right? And so I think being a little bit more thoughtful around there was something that I personally learned coming out of this process. So if I can leave you with anything, it would probably be that I'm a big proponent of technology enablement, and HR technology sat under my team. And so I am probably technology's #1 biggest fan and want to create processes that are efficient and can actually drive value and meaningful change. But it's actually, at the end of the day, it's people and authenticity and trust that you have to keep at the center. And if you don't, doesn't matter how great your initiative is. I mean, VNHE saved millions and millions of dollars. Didn't matter. It's not going to be successful. So I think that is my learning lesson. It's actually part of the reason why I joined Russell Reynolds. They have us like write up these bios, but I just joined Russell Reynolds, and it's part of the reason why I joined there. Russell Reynolds, their kind of mission is to change the way the world is led. They're the largest executive search firm, and so I'm predominantly now working with C-suite executives to kind of and boards to find their leadership teams. And so it's all of that, and my kind of personal move was inspired by some of the takeaways I had from the VNHE journey. So that is it. I'm happy to take any questions, comments, open it up for discussion. Yeah. Yeah. I think I would have had a better communication strategy, frankly. would have told people what we were doing. We'd have told people what the problem statement was. I think there was probably a misunderstanding of like, what are we solving for? Why are we even doing this? Why are we changing the way that we've always done things? That was probably question number one that we should have answered on the front end. And by putting the problem statement out there for everybody, and then talking through, so this is the problem, this is how we're thinking of solving it. Over the next year, we're going to be working on it. We'll have, roundtables, and we'd love to kind of get you guys on board and hear your thoughts and opinions as we build this thing out. I would have done that from the get-go. My team probably started doing it when we had a semblance of a product and a solution ready to go. But by that time, it was too late because people knew something was happening, and trust was lost. And so going back to the Abraham Lincoln quote, like the public sentiment thing, it was gone. And so I would have addressed it from the front end.